D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. A beautiful, warm day.
Yes.
In Nashville today. I hope all of you are taking advantage of that and wearing shorts if you can. I am wearing pants because I am inside Bridgestone Arena, where the Nashville Predators will host the Ottawa Senators tonight. An early start time of 6:30. Puck drop at 6:30. Pregame at 5:30 right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The only game in the NHL this evening. Senators at Predators. Again, puck drop at 6:30, pregame at 5:30 right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Gentlemen, I am in an excellent mood today. As I mentioned, the weather is gorgeous. I know it's probably a fake spring outside.
Faux spring.
But it is beautiful. Duke kicked the ever-loving crap out of Carolina on Saturday. Nothing can bring me down today. How about you guys?
Well, not the same for me.
Yeah, it was.
My teams did not
it
represent
was
quite as well.
Collapse in the second half by Vandy, who I did pick to win.
I did as well.
Take it to the bank, and they let me down. They let a lot of people down.
I like to say that I'm the only one that picked Arkansas to beat Kentucky, so I'll take my victory lap right now.
I do want to point out that Willie took a swing in his selections. He said that the Kentucky faithful would give John Calipari a standing ovation,
which they did.
They absolutely did not.
Ovation.
They absolutely did not.
They were standing.
They were standing, but they were not showing appreciation for John Calipari, which is what an ovation is by definition. So no points for Willie there. But Willie, you took some umbrage with Kentucky fans booing John Calipari. By the way, Arkansas goes into Rupp Arena, defeats the Wildcats
easily, by the way.
But you took some umbrage with how the Kentucky faithful responded to Calipari on Saturday.
Well, look, I have kidded the Kentucky fans for decades, right? Because they have such an arrogance to them.
Kentucky fans? No way.
An entitlement of, we're going to take over your gym, and you're going to, and that's just how it is. We're Kentucky. We're supposed to win because our jersey says Kentucky. But they have a very rich and deep tradition of basketball. They love the game.
Mm-hmm.
What I don't understand about this is that's just not Kentucky to do that. And I'm not a Kentucky fan. I know a ton of them, right? I'll never forget one of my freshman hallmates at Vanderbilt. It's when I really learned about Kentucky fans. Like, we became very good friends, right? All of the freshman basketball players were on this hall at Vanderbilt, Lupton 4. But my man, Daryl Martin, who passed away years ago, may he rest in peace, great guy, diehard Kentucky fan, grew up in Versailles, Kentucky.
Woo.
We're buddies. He's got the freshmen posted up on his dorm, the freshmen of Kentucky.
In the Vanderbilt dorm?
In the Vanderbilt dorm. He's got like, hey, wouldn't it be great if I could meet Jeff Brasso, like the counterpart? I'm like, Daryl, you realize these are the people, we're all same age. You've got like reverence for these guys. We're all 18 years old. We're just dudes, man. We're your boys. I just didn't understand how he could sit he could sit in the middle of the student section at Vanderbilt with a blue Kentucky sweatshirt on.
He did that?
Well, he could do it, yeah. And it wasn't any big deal. It was just in his blood.
Oh, okay.
So this is just how I understand. This is how the Kentucky fans are wild. But they love basketball. And so now let's get to Coach Cal. 15 years. They won a championship. They got to Final Fours. They had a lot of success. The last few years, I grant it didn't go well by their standards.
I think there was some recency bias in the booing on Saturday, because how many times?
But he's gone. Like, it's one thing if he's still the Kentucky coach and you're not happy with him and you show your displeasure there. That's part of it. But he's gone. So he comes back and you boo him? I do not understand that. That is very un-Kentucky-like to me. And so I was shocked, honestly, with all the build-up to it. I thought enough fans would override the whole, hey, let's boo Coach Cal. Wouldn't it be fun to boo? Appreciate what the guy did. I do think in another 5 or 10 years, they'll think differently. Like Rick Pitino but Rick Pitino went across the street to Louisville. Like that was different. And he went away for a while before he went to Louisville. That to me was a different thing. So I didn't get that. I'll be the first to say I was surprised, even though that there was a lot of buildup to it.
Yeah.
And to me, karma is a you-know-what.
Yeah.
They got their butt kicked. They got their butt kicked.
That was real-time karma.
Yeah.
It was happening in real time.
They lost that game for 40 minutes. They never even made a run in the second half. So you get what's coming to you sometimes. I think.
I'm not gonna lump all Kentucky fans together because I know Kentucky fans that still love Calipari, but he's gone, and it's like I'm not gonna sit there and cheer for him. I'm a Kentucky diehard. I get that part. But the fans that, went out of their way and made it their business to boo Cal. I mean, listen, I'm sure it didn't end the way that everybody wanted it to end, fan base included. And, you had Cal. We can rank some of Cal's teams that he's had. We can rank some of those teams like top 100 all time. Some of the talent that he has put together, but only managed one championship. So, I mean, the way it all happened at the end, did I like hearing the boos? No, because I thought he did a lot for Kentucky basketball. But come on, man. I'm sure he felt it was going to happen. At least some of the people were going to boo. He wasn't going to hear a roaring ovation, of gratitude from every Kentucky fan. He had to have known that, hey, there's going to be a portion of the fan base that does boo me.
Yeah, a portion.
And it happened.
But when you have 25,000 people in there, you should have a majority that gets it.
Yeah.
And says to themselves, you know what? The guy before Calipari, what was his name? Oh, yeah, Billy Gillespie. He stunk. He was a complete joke. And he lasted, 2 years?
Yeah.
And flamed out. Wasn't,
In Arkansas,
have a little perspective.
And Arkansas did Kentucky a favor, right? By hiring Calipari, so there wasn't a massive buyout that Kentucky had to undertake.
Understand that it was time. It was time.
Yes.
Right. I understand that. Mm-hmm. You didn't run him out of town. Like he had a big contractual leverage, right? That was a big, big part of the whole thing. But all these months later, you got kind of what you wanted.
Yeah.
It was time to move on. He got probably deep down what he wanted. It was time for something new. So appreciate what the guy did. Why the booing, the bitter? I don't understand that.
Hey, I say, sometimes sports, I would have expected this, say, like from a fan base like UT. I would have expected
that to me. I get like that's. I agree with
UT.
that. This is an educated group of fans. This is a basketball loving.
And I'm not saying
they know better than that.
I'm not saying that Tennessee fan base isn't educated. I'm just saying. I think Kentucky.
It's a basketball school.
Yes,
Tennessee is not as much of a basketball school.
A football school, yes, but a basketball school. And I would just think that because Kentucky is such an enriched basketball school, that they would appreciate more what Cal brought to the table and wouldn't boo him, as opposed to, UT. Yes, they've been good, but it's not like they're trenched in basketball sort of history as far as them being nationally ranked. So if they choose to move on from their coach, if he comes back, would I be surprised if they booed him? Probably not. So I just didn't expect it from the fans of Kentucky, but it happened, and I guess it's just a new fan base now. It's not the old,
we'll see what happens.
What's your friend's name that passed away?
Oh, Daryl. Yeah,
it's not Daryl's fan base anymore, man.
Amy from Arkansas says it's a great day to be a hog, and that's true. And we'll see what happens in the SEC tournament, which will be held in this building. I believe it was Jay Billis who said that it might be harder to win the SEC tournament than the NCAA tournament, considering the quality of teams in that conference.
Arkansas is not short on talent, by the way.
No.
They were impressive, and they are towards the bottom of the league. It's Vanderbilt got a rude awakening at Oklahoma. Oklahoma can shoot the lights out at home, and they did. That was
I'm excited
incredible.
for the SEC tournament this year. I look forward to being here for as many of those games as I can possibly be here for. But moving on to the Titans, gentlemen, in our society today, it's all about the soundbite, right? You can give a speech for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, but if you say one thing within 10, 15 seconds of that speech, it's going to be clipped, it's going to be put on social media, it's going to go viral, it might be taken out of context, but that's just the society we live in today. Everything we say is highly scrutinized, and one person learned that this past weekend, and that was Tennessee Titans head coach Brian Callahan. Our friend Teron Davenport, who will join us at 1 o'clock, as he does every Monday to discuss the Tennessee Titans, had a story from Mobile, Alabama, from the Senior Bowl, talking about the Titans evaluation process when it comes to the quarterbacks. Now, who is a well-known quarterback that Brian Callahan has recently worked with? Joe Burrow. In this story, Callahan makes what I would call a slight comparison between Joe Burrow and Shedeur Sanders. This is part of the story from Teron Davenport. Quote, Callahan has seen this movie before. His input helped the Bengals land on Burrow despite being able to pick from the full stock of prospects. Back then, Burrow hadn't pulled away from the group. Fellow quarterbacks Tua Tagovailoa and Justin Herbert drew consideration, but Burrow's ability to produce in the clutch won Callahan and the staff over. Later in the story, Teron writes, Callahan also mentioned arm strength at a baseline level, but he pointed to how arm strength can be offset by anticipatory throws. And here's the quote that's spread around. Quote, people had questioned about Burrow's arm strength in general coming out, Callahan said. One of the things that makes Joe so unique, and I think you can probably put Shedeur in the same conversation, they anticipate when they throw it. They have the timing and accuracy on top of it. That makes up for the arm strength. Those things are how you make up for maybe not having the biggest arm. If you're throwing on time and putting a ball when and where you're supposed to go, you're not going to have too many problems. So when you read that quote, you don't think too much of it. But man, oh man, did the aggregators have a field day with this one. I saw a headline that was, Tennessee coach Brian Callahan makes a lofty comparison between Shedeur Sanders and Joe Burrow. And a lot of, can you believe that Brian Callahan compared Shedeur Sanders to Joe Burrow? This is the world we live in right now. Things like that, which when I read the full quote, I would say it's a rather innocuous quote.
Yeah, what's wrong with that quote, really?
But it spread like wildfire. Did you hear what Brian Callahan said comparing Shedeur Sanders to Joe Burrow? That's just the world we live in right now.
I'm not, you know me, I'm pretty consistent. I don't like, I try to point out when that happens. And a big example was when Ryan Tannehill, in a similar situation, in that it was a very long press conference, he addressed all of his demons he was facing the summer after he had the bad playoff game against the Bengals. And he mentioned about Malik Willis. I can't remember what the quote was. It was a very, I think, an innocuous quote in the middle of a very long thing. He said, I'm not going to be his mentor or something like that. And that spread like wildfire over the summer. And I thought that was just really, really unfair and not representative of the tone in the press conference. So here's what I would say with this. Good. I hope people think that the Titans are going to take Shedeur Sanders hand over fist in the first for the first pick, and you want to read into it that much. Great. I hope some other teams think that too. Like you want to create all kinds of distractions and smoke and here and there. You got to keep you want to play that game the best you can and hold the cards. So if people want to take a quote like that and read into it, then more power to them.
Let me just read you a sampling of the headlines. If you type in Brian Callahan, Shedeur Sanders, if you just type in Brian Callahan, Shedeur Sanders into Google, Titans HC, Brian Callahan turns heads with Shedeur Sanders comments. Titans Brian Callahan makes lofty Shedeur Sanders Joe Burrow comparison. Shedeur Sanders draws comparisons to former number one pick from Titans head coach Brian Callahan.
I don't really have a problem with draws comparisons. Comparisons are fine.
Here's another one.
Lofty? What was the other one? The one said lofty?
Yes. From the New York Post, Titans Brian Callahan makes lofty Shedeur Sanders, Joe Burrow.
So when you read the quote, did you say to yourself, he's making lofty
I did
comparisons?
not, but here's
Right.
my favorite one from the Pro Football Network. Quote, stop lying. NFL fans call out Titans HC for wild Shedeur Sanders, Joe Burrow.
Wild. Was there anything wild about that quote, D-Nace?
I didn't hear
Was it
anything
wild?
It was wild and crazy.
Listen, here's the, I guess here's how I sum it up in a sense. You know, he did not. And listen, when you are putting something out on Twitter or X, whatever, you want to grab someone's attention. And how do you grab someone's attention? You put headlines such as the one that Adam read. And if you didn't initially read Tehran's if you didn't read Tehran's article, then you would be up in arms like, whoa, what?
It's a long article. It's a long article, but
and it's a good read.
That quote was the only thing that was aggregated. People saw it, pulled that quote, wrote their own piece, threw that quote in there. That's just the way that people do the internet these
they
days.
should thank Tehran because Tehran gave them
plenty of content.
Yeah, even though that's not what he meant to do, but
so that is not Tehran's fault.
Yeah, so it's not Tehran's fault.
Tehran did nothing.
But he did his job. But my thing is this. I too see comparisons in Shedeur Sanders and Joe Burrow. You would be a blind person to not be able to see some of the comparisons. He did not say that Shedeur Sanders was Joe Burrow.
Right.
There are comparisons. Yes, the way he reads the field and the way he anticipates throws because he doesn't have that strong arm. Tom Brady didn't have the strongest arm. Peyton Manning toward the end didn't have the strongest arm. But what did they have? They had the ability to anticipate. Drew Brees, he didn't have a strong arm, but he had the ability to anticipate. Brock Purdy doesn't have a strong arm, but he has the ability to anticipate. And that's what Joe Burrow has as well. Right. People, so if you understand and know football, you knew exactly what he meant.
Yes.
And I'm glad that out of all the things that you can have, in comparisons to or not compared to, I'm glad Shedeur Sanders has that comparison to Joe Burrow. He didn't compare him to Joe Flacco. He didn't compare him to Will Levis. He didn't compare him to even though I like Dak Prescott, he didn't compare him to Dak Prescott, did he? He compared him to one of the greatest quarterbacks that is playing the game now. He compared an attribute that he has, not the whole person, the attribute, which I'm glad. I want a quarterback because that's what Will Levis can't do.
Right. Here's the other thing. Brian Callahan tries to honestly answer a question that is asked of him. He's not going to give you a bunch of BS. He's trying to give you an intelligent answer. And like you said, he is not saying this is the next Joe Burrow. He didn't say that. I'll give you two examples. I played two sports, right? I played basketball and baseball. I was billed coming to Vanderbilt as a basketball player in the same mold as Barry Goheen, a great player for 4 years at Vanderbilt. I'm left-handed. He's left-handed. I have roughly the same build as him. Did I become the next Barry Goheen? No. And fortunately, I wasn't billed as the next Barry Goheen.
Were you billed as the next anybody?
No, but it's a profile. It's a profile of what reminds me of how do I describe this player who nobody's seen play yet, who's coming to it? Well, he's built a little bit like Barry Goheen. He's left-handed. He can play point guard and two guard. So that is trying to make an intelligent answer. But I sure as heck wasn't the next Barry Goheen, and my coach didn't say this is going to be the next Barry Goheen. I got drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays. The scouts saw a left-handed swing, good smooth swing, a lot of contact. They compared me to John Olerud, who was the first baseman at the time, a great first baseman. Was I the next John Olerud? No, I was not the next John Olerud. But it's a profile of a style of play, of who does he remind you of? Who do you hope he can develop into? That's what these are all about. It's not, I'm trying to build this guy up to be. You're trying to answer a question intelligently
Exactly.
and look at traits of a player. If that doesn't ring a bell, I mean, but if you want to be the guy, like you said, if you want to be the person that's, oh, he's trying to tell me this. If you want to be that guy, then be that guy.
Exactly.
It's a free country.
We have a feud brewing in the text line. I mentioned,
Please,
I
yes.
mentioned Amy from Arkansas said, "Great day to be a hog." Dustin from Hopkinsville, Kentucky, responded to congratulate Amy on her team's basically closest to a national championship game you're going to get. See you soon. So we
Nice.
have a Kentucky-Arkansas feud brewing in the text line. I'm all for it. 615-737-1025. That's where you can text us if you want to text us some anti-Kentucky, anti-Arkansas, Joe Burrow, Shador Sanders, whatever you want. You can also call us at 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Hey, Preds fans, don't miss Smashville Live this Wednesday night at Brewhouse 100 in Bellevue at 6 o'clock. See your Predator star players up close and personal. Get autographs and pictures. Guests this week, Justin Barron and Nick Blankenberg. That's Justin Barron and Nick Blankenberg Wednesday night at Brewhouse 100, 6 o'clock in Bellevue.
Hey, let's tell you about Loan Pronto. They are the leader in quickly converting home equity into cold hard cash. If you're a home owner and you're looking to get some cash to address a financial need, maybe with the weather a little bit warmer, you got your eye on a home improvement project. Maybe it's the outdoor patio, maybe it's a kitchen or bathroom, and you need cash to fund it, make that home even more valuable. You can do it through Loan Pronto, and you can do it quick. They have several easy ways to let you access that cash from your home. No paperwork, no cumbersome process, no junk fees, often no appraisal. Your average homeowner has a lot of equity, especially in our area. That's your money. You can put it to use if you need it. So get approved in as little as 1 day with no hard credit pull up front. Call Loan Pronto, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781, subject to lender approval, NMLS consumeraccess.org.
Hey, Duncan fans, come experience the new age of Duncan at the grand opening of their newly remodeled Brentwood location at 4930 Thoroughbred Lane this Friday. Duncan will be giving away 100 days of free coffee to the first 100 guests in line starting at 8 a.m. That's right, 100 days of free coffee for the first 100 people. Plus, Robbie and Rexroad will be broadcasting live from 6 to 9, and we'll have Preds tickets to give away. Enjoy your Dunkin' favorites in the bakery case, breakfast all day, $5 meal deals, and, of course, that delicious Dunkin' coffee. That's the grand opening of the Dunkin' this Friday in Brentwood at 8 a.m. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you live at Bridgestone Arena. Predators and Senators tonight at 6:30. Again, 6:30. Pregame at 5:30 right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Andrew from Dover. Well, actually, we'll get to Andrew in Dover later because he asks about the jaw-dropping trade we saw in the NBA over the weekend with Luka Doncic.
Man,
I will tell you how big of a jaw dropper that was. The plane landed from Pittsburgh, and a plane full of hockey fans were buzzing about the NBA trade. That's how big that trade was. Their jaws were dropped, and these were people that I wasn't sure followed the NBA that closely.
My favorite story about this, by the way, I think I was listening to Bobby Marks on ESPN, and they were asking him for his thoughts on the trade. And he said that when he saw Shams Charania's tweet with the trade, he didn't want to retweet it because he thought Shams had been hacked. So he actually called Shams and said, "Are you good? Like, are you okay? Is this real?"
Did somebody steal your phone?
And then when he got the go-ahead, Bobby Marks shared it. But that's just it. We'll get into that a little bit later in the program. So we're talking Titans. A quote from Teron Davenport. A quote from Brian Callahan in a story written by Teron Davenport, where Brian Callahan makes a passing comparison, literally, and like passing, like throwing the ball, but also just like a passing comparison between Joe Burrow and Shedeur Sanders. That quote got aggregated and it spread all over the place. And did you see the lofty comparison, the wild and crazy comparison that Brian Callahan made between Joe Burrow and Shedeur Sanders? And one texter said, "Wow, to be one of those quarterbacks, so great. No one should dare compare another quarterback to them. That must be a really exclusive club."
Again, I just look at it from the standpoint of, he's not saying that he's going to be Joe Burrow. But what he did say is these are some of the characteristics of Joe Burrow that I see in Shedeur Sanders. And just because I see those things, again, doesn't mean he will become that person. I mean, when back in the day when what's the kid from University of Houston, Klinger and Andre Ware. When Andre Ware came out, I'm sure there was comparisons to Dan Marino because of the quick release, strong arm, and the ability to be able to get it into tight places. But did he become Dan Marino? No, he didn't become Dan Marino. But did he have some of those characteristics? Just like the kid from New England right before Tom Brady became the starter.
Drew Bledsoe?
Yeah, Drew Bledsoe when he came out. I guarantee you there were some comparisons also to a Dan Marino. But did he turn out as Dan Marino? No, like you said, Willie, just because an individual has some of the characteristics doesn't mean he will. That's who they are saying the guy will be. No, the guy just has some characteristics to this guy, but ultimately he's his own player. Again, the way that Shedeur Sanders anticipates, if you've just, I would suggest, especially Titan fans, because the Titans have the number 1 pick, and the quarterback position is sort of slim this year. Go back and watch Shedeur Sanders play, even in their losses. Just go back and watch Shedeur Sanders play over the last 2 years. Just watch them. And you too, I think, will come away with, man, okay, what Brian Callahan was talking about, I see. A guy that has that ability to anticipate throws. A guy that has, and also what he does that Joe Burrow does so well is what he buys time. And I sort of equate that more to a Patrick Mahomes than I do to a Joe Burrow. So he has the characteristic of a Patrick Mahomes, getting outside the pocket, not to run, but to buy time. And then he has the ability to anticipate like Joe Burrow. But will he ultimately be those two guys? Probably not. If the Titans draft him, I hope he is. But those are just things that you can sort of say, okay, I like him because he does this like such and such.
Josh on our text line says Levis was compared to Josh Allen, and we all know that didn't happen, LOL. But that's why I always get a bit hesitant. We talked about this last week when we were talking about one of the comparisons I saw to Cam Ward was Jordan Love. This is why I'm always a bit hesitant when I see projections or comparisons, because they tend to be, to use the word we were using earlier, a bit loftier than they probably should be. I do remember reading a lot of Josh Allen, Will Levis comparisons when Levis was coming out of Kentucky. And as Josh said on the text line, nowhere near that. But I understand what you're saying, Derek, and I agree. You know, Shedeur Sanders can have Burrow-like qualities without being compared to Joe Burrow. Exactly. I don't think anybody is saying that Shedeur Sanders is going to be the next Joe Burrow. If that was the case, then we wouldn't have anything to wonder about when it came to the number 1 overall pick, right? Really, we would know that the Titans were going to take Shedeur Sanders with the number 1 pick, and we would just be talking about that for the next few months.
There are quarterbacks like that do come around every now and then. Burrow, I think, if I remember correctly, of course, it was COVID, so it was a little weird, and there wasn't maybe as much buzz, and you couldn't do the workouts and everything, so that was unique about his situation. But a guy like Andrew Luck, you can go back through history, you kind of knew hands down who the first pick was going to be, and this is definitely not one of those years right now. That could change, I guess, in the next couple months, but it doesn't seem like there is a consensus, hands down, number 1 pick.
Adam from Portland is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Adam, thank you for calling, my friend. Please go ahead.
Yeah, what's weird is that when I think about this whole season, I think the only reason Callahan's thinking about a Joe Burrow comparison is because he wants Shedeur. And I get it. Like, I think Will Levis ruined the possibility of us getting Cam Ward. If they're smart and they don't want to get fired, you will not draft Cam Ward, just because you can't take a risk with a player that his biggest hiccup that they talk about is, he's a little wild, or he does stuff that reminds me of Will Levis. Because I've heard that. Oh my God. When I think about this whole season, all I think about is the first week flick six, and then the next week him doing it again. So that ruined it. That right there ruined it for us to draft Cam Ward. You got to draft. And I've seen Deion's kid go through progressions. He's very good at that. Like, you could tell his dad's put a lot of money and work into him being a good quarterback. And he looks good to me. So if you're going to pick a quarterback, which I hope it's Abdul Carter, I hope it's not a quarterback, but if you're going to pick one, I think you got to pick Shedeur Sanders, just because Will Levis was so incredibly bad and like loose with the football. You can't pick another quarterback that even resembles it.
Thanks for the call, Adam.
I mean, Adam does have a point in the sense of, you know, do you want to put your job on the line for a guy that has a high ceiling, and so did Will Levis, a high ceiling, but doesn't quite, you know, develop the way you need him to develop? Or are you going to take a guy that you feel that, okay, this guy is developed enough, he can come in right away and win us some games, and in the process of winning games, I can teach him what I need him to know on an NFL level? And it wouldn't be, to me, Shedeur Sanders to me isn't a risk. Whether you believe he should be drafted number 1 or not, that's up to you. But if you're talking about, I'm taking a risk on this guy, no, he's not a risk. But because I think he's proven,
no more so than anybody else.
Any other quarterback,
everybody's a risk.
Exactly.
Right? You'd have to say that. Even the no-brainers.
That is just
Ryan Leaf didn't seem like he had much of a risk. Yeah. He was the second pick, and he didn't do very well. Exactly. So there's always risk, I think.
There's always risk that you make. I actually, you know, obviously the higher you get up, it's more of a calculated risk than anything. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, to me, Shedeur Sanders is no more a risk than the guys were in last year's draft. There's always something that can go completely left, and it just doesn't go right. I think if you want a safe pick, and maybe this draft is about safe picks. If you want to go a safe pick, I'm not sure from a quarterback standpoint. I'm not sure if you're going to get a safer pick than Shedeur Sanders.
Well,
but is that worth the number one pick?
Well, this reminds me, how people who know these things evaluate quarterbacks. I mean, they know a lot more than we do, but there are still gaps in that. I am reminded, and I just looked this up. I found a clip. I don't have it to play. From April of 2022, we would all agree, right? Mina Kimes on ESPN, really sharp mind for football, really intelligent football analyst. Also a noted Seahawks fan. She went on NFL Live before the draft and said, I quote, "I'm begging you," to John Schneider, the GM of the Seahawks, "please, for the love of God, draft Malik Willis." That's a quote. That's not me. No. There's always these sort of blind spots when it comes to these things. We hear that Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward are not on the same level as the quarterbacks that went in the top of the draft last year, and that could be true. But there is a lot of unknown when it comes to this. And I think that's something that we sometimes forget when we have these conversations.
I agree, and nobody's got it down to a science. It's not easy. Otherwise, there would be way less misses at the top of the draft every year. And people have, I think, unreasonable expectations when you pick high. That's why I am a big believer in trading down and getting a quantity of high picks when you have the first pick, especially if it doesn't look like it's here I go with the word, but something close to a generational no-brainer first pick, which doesn't look like it's the case this year.
Should we ban the use of that word on this program?
Generational?
Yes,
let's do that. Unless we all
that has to be
together.
a generational decision, guys.
It has to be a consensus among.
Or if you use it, you can't use it again until 20 years down the road when the next generation starts.
David, if you have like a buzzer sound, if someone ever says generational during the show, just go.
Buzzer or laser zap or something like that. Yeah,
it's a banned word on this program.
No, we can say it with guys that are already in the NFL that have proven they are generational players.
We'll workshop the rules here, but I'm thinking that generational probably needs to be curbed on our show. 615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on all things Titans, all things NFL draft. This week's Nashville's best deal is Princess Hot Chicken. Oh boy. The original and iconic hot chicken joint. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. The gift card, by the way, is only good for the Tanger Outlets location in Antioch and inside Assembly Food Hall right across the street here in downtown Nashville.
Happy Monday, everyone. This is Derek Mason, and you heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff over at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are this is not your first time setting some type of goal to shed extra pounds only to come up disappointed or come up a few pounds short, okay? But I got a solution for you, because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understand the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain. We tailor nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mace Vingan, Adonic 1025, 1063 the game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Live at Bridgestone Arena. Predators and Senators tonight. Puck drop at 6:30.
6:30.
6:30.
Don't show up at 7 and say, "Hey, what's going on?" It's the middle of the first period. What happened?
6:30.
6:30.
Pregame at 5:30. Right here.
And if you're wondering why, it's the equivalent of the Thursday night Anaheim.
Wednesday night Vancouver.
The Thursday night. No, this is a little different. Thursday night Amazon Prime NFL game that we're used to, right?
Okay.
Al Michaels, Kirk Herbstreit. You have to have Amazon Prime to see it. It's not going to be on your TV. This is the equivalent for the NHL in Canada.
Yes.
Monday, they have a Monday night Amazon game that can only be seen on Amazon up there.
Here
in
it will still be
here.
on FanDuel
We're
Sports
here,
Network.
so we got our deal. So don't pay it. But that's the reason it's starting at 6:30.
And it's the only game in the league tonight as well.
Yeah. So
So
all eyes of Canada will be watching this.
Yes.
It's like Monday Night Football.
Predators and Senators tonight at 6:30. Pregame at 5:30. Let's go to our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, Callahan is in over his head. If I was a young quarterback coming into the league, I would not want to go to a team that can't even run a no huddle. Callahan is lost. The look on his face during games, listening to him in interviews, the emotional response after one of his 3 wins, he just seems overwhelmed. Mike Borgonzi in the story from Tehran Davenport, who again we will speak to at 1 o'clock, said, Callahan's very smart and detailed. He's been around some pretty good ones, Peyton Manning, Joe Burrow, and Matthew Stafford. I think that helps being around players like that, knowing what to look for in terms of just footwork, dropping the eyes downfield, etc., in terms of Callahan's expertise with quarterbacks. But the texter's point is one that I have seen plenty of, which is, are we sure Brian Callahan is the right coach for the job? Well, we did not see a lot from Brian Callahan this past season that suggests that he is going to be the next big thing as an NFL head coach. But I don't know if I would completely write him off yet. Now, if next season starts and things start to go the way this season went, I think Brian Callahan is certainly the easiest scapegoat, considering he was not hired by the new administration, Mike Borgonzi, etc. But the idea that a young quarterback coming into the league would not want to go to the Titans because Brian Callahan is the coach. Well, first of all, they don't really have that much of a choice. I know there have been examples of quarterbacks. We've mentioned Eli Manning many times. John Elway, if I'm not mistaken, as well, strong-arming their way to a certain situation, but it doesn't happen a lot.
No, it doesn't.
And I don't think it would happen because Shedeur Sanders doesn't want to play for Brian Callahan.
Exactly. Listen, as a first-year head coach, you're not going to get everything right. You're just not. You look at, let's just go no further than Mike Vrabel. His first year wasn't perfect. He did some things that we just shook our head or scratched our head in regards to, and we're talking about in-game things. But he learned, and as he moved forward, he stopped making. He started to make less of those mistakes as a head coach.
For example, emotional challenges where he got
Absolutely.
caught up in the moment. His players coming over, Coach, I caught it.
Exactly.
Throw the challenge flag. I think he got into a few of those and learned I have to keep my emotions
Exactly.
and my want to satisfy my players. I have to separate.
You got to
that from
temper it,
what
or
my
you gotta,
guys upstairs. are
exactly,
saying.
or you got to know when and where to do it. You know, and he found that out as a head coach as he continued to coach. So listen, Brian Callahan isn't perfect. I get it. And maybe it doesn't work out for him with the Tennessee Titans. But I'm not going to sit there and look at the first season knowing what I know about this team at that particular time, that they were depleted of talent and the quarterback just wasn't the quarterback. I'm going to take that year and I'm going to say he did some things good, I thought, and he did some things bad. But that was a learning year for him. This year, if he makes the same mistakes, then we can say, okay, he may not be the coach. But if you start to see him the way he sort of becomes the CEO of the team, and if he starts to develop that way and know how to manage now those situations, then I'm okay with it. because I'm not going to sit here and jump on him for some mistakes he made as a first-year head coach. Every coach, even the great ones, have done it. They've made mistakes their first couple of years. Bill Belichick, again, didn't become Bill Belichick all of a sudden. You know, he was the coach of another team before, and they were okay. They wasn't great. But as he coached more, he started to figure out more. And now he's regarded as one of the greatest head coaches in all of sports. I'm not saying Brian Callahan is going to be that. I hope he does.
Be careful. You
Exactly.
might be aggregated into a headline.
Absolutely.
Derek Mason makes
It's gonna
lofty
be flipped so hard.
Derek Mason makes lofty comparison between Brian Callahan and Bill Belichick. It's happening.
my
Is Brian
goodness.
Callahan gonna be the new goat of the
Here we go.
NFL?
Here we go.
I'm not
Find out.
saying I'm not
Aggregators, if
saying
you're
that.
listening, I know.
Jared's
What
going
I'm
to start
saying
the
is-
show with this
exactly.
thing.
Did you hear what Derek said?
What I'm saying is this: give the man. Don't just take that first year and say all of a sudden he can't coach. Okay, they're not firing him. He will get another opportunity, and if he shows that he's not the coach for the job, then okay, you move forward. But every coach didn't start their career a Hall of Fame coach. They just didn't. They ultimately became a Hall of Fame coach, but they didn't start out as a Hall of Fame coach. So again, I'm not saying that Callahan will be a Hall of Fame coach. What I'm saying is I'm not holding this first year against him and saying, oh my goodness, he can't coach. Did y'all see that team last year? Even as they named him head coach, did y'all realize that roster was depleted? I guess people don't understand that part. No, look at
Got tongue tied there for a minute. I do want to take one moment to. I was wondering when somebody was going to mention this on the text line.
Ooh, yes.
One texter says, "Give the number 1 pick to Cleveland for Myles Garrett." Myles Garrett has requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. I was awaiting someone to text in to suggest that the Titans trade the number 1 pick.
You realize they
Yeah.
have the number 2 pick.
Yeah, they have the number.
Cleveland
2
has the
picks.
number 2 pick. So
Unless they want that guy that you want also. Nah.
Yeah.
But then again,
do if I'm the Titans, do we get your pick? Yeah,
do
I'll
I get
sign
the
up for that. I'll
yeah,
take
if I
the
get
number 2 and get
pick,
Garrett.
You get the number 1
I don't
pick,
think
give me
they would do
Garrett.
that.
And I give you something else.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna give me Garrett and I still get to keep the number 2 pick, give it to me all day. But Garrett said he wants to compete for a Super Bowl. If he believes the Titans compete for a Super Bowl within the next year or two, then great.
Here's the first line of his statement. As a kid dreaming of the NFL, all I focused on was the ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. Stop.
Yeah, that's where you need to stop.
I mean, it's just a lot of drama.
Exactly.
He's trying to be apologetic about it, but he's put the Browns in a terrible situation. Going public like that, now he's screwed the Browns. The Browns have been bad anyway, but now
they got it.
You're going to get 50 cents on the dollar because I don't know what his cap hit is, but it's going to be hard to get equal value.
Adam Schefter said a potential trade comp when 27-year-old Khalil Mack was traded from Oakland to Chicago. The Bears gave up 2 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a sixth-round pick. For Mack, a second-round pick and a conditional fifth-round pick.
And how did that work? Not real well for the Bears.
No, he's on the Chargers now, right? Khalil Mack?
Yeah, the Bears, I think, had one good season in there while Mack was playing. It's hard to give up that kind of capital. And so I'd be surprised if somebody does that. As great as Garrett is, I think if you're the Browns, it's intriguing. Because we know it's not easy to trade with the situation that you're in.
Mm-hmm.
I think people are going to probably wait it out and see if they can lower the standard. But like you said, who's got the cap space and the draft capital and is trying to win now?
Mm-hmm.
That will do it. That's what you're hoping for if you're the Browns. I just wonder who that team would be. He's an incredible player, and you'll have him like Adam just pointed out. It's not like he's 31.
Yeah,
right. You feel like you still got the back half of his prime the next 2 or 3 years at least.
Don't be surprised if Jerry Jones step up to the plate.
We shall see.
He usually likes to get in on these things,
exactly.
right?
So.
Yes. 615-737-1025. We'll continue the conversation about the Titans. On the other side, Willie Dunnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace Finn, Ginadonic, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Garrick Mason, Adam Bingen here with you at Bridgestone Arena. Predators and Senators tonight at 6:30. Pre-game at 5:30 right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. The only game in the NHL tonight. So the Predators and Senators have the entire league to themselves. We were talking Titans quarterbacks. We talked about the comparison that Brian Callahan made between Joe Burrow and Shedeur Sanders that was aggregated up the wazoo.
Mm-hmm.
These things tend to happen. I was reading something else late last week on The Athletic from Jeff Howe, who is one of their NFL insiders. The headline, what I'm hearing, NFL insiders skeptical there's a franchise caliber quarterback available in the draft. Howe writes, quote, over the past month, numerous front office sources echoed a common refrain to The Athletic. They would not rank any of the draft prospects ahead of the 6 quarterbacks who were selected in the first round last year. One executive said, quote, I would guess 90% of the people here at the Senior Bowl would feel that way. About the Titans specifically, Jeff Howe writes, quote, the Titans who have a need at quarterback have a fascinating decision ahead of them with the top pick. They have a new regime after hiring GM Mike Borgonzi, and it's believed by some that they prefer Ward to Sanders. However, the Titans met with Sanders for about an hour last week at the East-West Shrine Bowl, according to a leaked source. That's viewed as a longer time than usual to meet with a prospect in that type of setting. It could be chalked up to pure due diligence or even a smokescreen, but because evaluators want to meet with Sanders to see where football lies on his list of priorities, the extended meetings could also be a strong sign of their serious interest in the son of the Pro Football Hall of Famer. Deion Sanders, by the way, called into Shedeur's meeting with the Titans, the leak source said, which we already knew because Jim Wyatt mentioned that. So once again, we're hearing what we've been talking about now for the past number of weeks, that there is skepticism, that there is a franchise caliber quarterback available in the draft. But the question is, it's not so much if there is one, but if the Titans think there is one. If the Titans believe that Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders is a franchise caliber quarterback, then go for it. Draft him. If that's what your evaluation, that's what your scouting decides, that these 2 quarterbacks are capable of being franchise caliber, then go for it. But again, it's just another report about the relative lack of enthusiasm for this quarterback class this season.
Yeah, and listen, I was going back and sort of looking at the quarterback class of last year, and sort of the grades. Now, listen, this was done by ESPN, and I don't know what grade, ultimately, because these are like final grades on quarterbacks that got drafted last year in the first round. Obviously, Caleb Williams, he was drafted first overall. He had a 97 grade. Jaden Daniels, 94. Drake May, 93. Penix, 85. And then Bo Nix, 87 grade. So I wonder what the grade would be because, people are talking as if, Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward wouldn't have been in the mix at all last year. And I find that, frankly, hard to believe. I really do. If you take what they did this year and compare to the guys, what they did when they were coming out last year, it's hard for me to believe that you wouldn't rank these guys there. It wouldn't be sort of a battle in a sort of continual sort of like movement in regards to the quarterbacks and how they would be drafted. There probably would have been a consensus that Caleb Williams was the number 1 guy because even had he come out the year prior to last year, I think people still had him as the number 1 or number 2 quarterback coming out. So we can safely say that Caleb Williams would have still been the number 1 guy. Jaden Daniels probably would have been the number 2 guy given he won the Heisman and everything else and what he was able to do with that team because they had no defense. And he exploded. So those 2 guys would have been the consensus, I think, 1 and 2. Now, I think after that, there would have been Drake May probably would have fell at number 3, but then there would have been this jockeying for positions. And I do believe that Cam and Shedeur would have been in the midst of that jockeying. I just think because there's not a one clear-cut guy and then a bunch of other guys that sort of fall in that they can be drafted number one, like they have a number one grade. A lot of these guys may not have a number one grade this year, but to say that, Cam and Shedeur wouldn't even be like in the mix, I do truly find that hard to believe.
And this goes to like the mentioning when you
based
mentioned
on the seasons they had this year.
Mentioning the guys from last year too. I feel like you guys tell me if I'm wrong. It was pretty clear cut that Williams would be the first pick.
Exactly.
Everybody else thought the other guys would go high. And I feel like McCarthy and Nix in particular sort of made late runs. It started getting talked about as first-round picks.
I don't ever recall a time.
Jaden Daniels, season. I think there was a little more of a range of what they thought, but there was never a Daniels could be better than Caleb Williams.
Right.
Williams was so clear-cut as the number one. It's not going to be like that this year. But all of that to say, if you like one of these guys, there's nothing wrong with saying, I like him, but I'm not going to take him just with my number one pick, and that's the only asset I'm going to get when I have the first pick. I would be way more into, let me see if I can have my cake and eat it too. Let's move down to a slot where I could still might get a shot at these guys, even if it means I end up missing out. If I miss out this year, okay, I have to live with that. But my priority, I think, is to get maximum assets from the first overall pick.
And we talked about that last week with that study that was referenced in the article from The Athletic, written by a future Nobel Prize winning economist, about how the number one pick has, what was it, the lowest value relative, like in how, I can't remember how it was described.
It's the lowest value relative to how high the pick is. The pick obviously doesn't get any higher than one. But if you look year in and year out, you have a lot of years where the number one pick ends up being a great player, but you have a lot of years where the number one pick, the highest pick you can get, is a fairly ordinary player, right?
Yes. It also says in this article from Jeff Howe from The Athletic, it also can't be ignored. The Titans president of football operations, Chad Brinker, recently said they, quote, won't pass on the generational talent. Woo, woo. There's my alarm. We'll come up with a better one. With the first pick. Considering the general lack of excitement over the quarterback class, it's conceivable Brinker was referring to a player at another position, perhaps Colorado cornerback / receiver Travis Hunter or Penn State linebacker Abdul Carter. A few executives also believed the Titans would be better off trading the pick. The debate between Ward and Sanders is interesting. Ward has the bigger arm and is more physically gifted, but he needs to be more disciplined with the football. Sanders had better tape and is the more accurate passer, but he doesn't have an electric arm. And again, teams are curious whether Sanders will fully dedicate himself to being a great player at the NFL level, which is something they hope to uncover over the next couple months of meetings. If teams like what they learned, Sanders will likely be a high pick. If not, one executive went so far as to predict he'll fall out of the first round. Forgive me if I am not as concerned about is Shedeur Sanders really committed to the game of football.
Yeah.
That doesn't worry me at all.
To quote the kids these days, you can miss me with that. I think that's what they say. You can miss me with that. I'm not concerned that Shedeur Sanders is more concerned about the things that come with being a football
Well, what you're
player.
saying that you say every year, D-Mace?
It's either what the NFL can do for you or what you can do for the NFL, meaning your legacy. What legacy? Like, what do you want to put into this sport? Listen, this is what and it happens every year. And it happened with CJ Stroud a couple years ago. It happened with just about every player. All of a sudden, it's just like, why do y'all, like, what showed y'all that he did? Listen, when he left Jackson State and went with his dad to Colorado, he performed. He did nothing no other player or quarterback out there in this day and age, the NIL sort of, that other players haven't done. Meaning, listen, he's he got the car just like every other big time, you know. And hell, who was it last year? Was it Carson? Carson Beck that had the
Lamborghini.
The Lamborghini, yeah.
Despite having
exactly.
all of his teammates in these, racing, reckless
Exactly.
driving, all of these things that were going on.
Absolutely.
He was like, "Hey, we got to cool it." Well, what kind of car do you drive? Well, I drive a Lamborghini.
Exactly. He didn't get in any trouble. But what I'm saying is this: Shedeur Sanders did nothing no more than what Carson Beck did in regards to possibly some outside things that doesn't, sort of make, if you do it, you don't. As long as you, do what you have to do on the football field or in the classroom. He hasn't let any of that deter him from going each and every week, giving his team an opportunity to win. We didn't see Shedeur Sanders, getting in trouble. We didn't see Shedeur Sanders at parties and all this other stuff. We didn't see all of that. What we saw was a young man in college being, having dual responsibilities, a football player and a student, and just living his life. Not one time did I ever think, oh man, he's doing something that makes it seem like he doesn't care about football. All I saw was this dude care about winning. This dude got knocked down 1 million times.
He did take a beating.
He took a beating for 2 years. And y'all tell me that's not dedication? He knew that offense in and out. He did everything that he could possibly do at the quarterback position. He was a leader. He didn't throw anybody under the bus. He kept everything like on the up and up. He did what any other quarterback in his position would do. What makes you think he's not dedicated? Just because his dad's Deion Sanders? Y'all not saying that about Manning? He got probably the most popular parent and uncles that ever played in the NFL.
Right. You hear that sometimes about a son of a great player in all sports where you say, well, he's financially set. He's not hungry to succeed because whether he makes it or not, he's going to be fine financially. That's used against those guys a lot of times.
Exactly.
But that overlooks when you watch a guy play his competitiveness, right? I think that's what I'm looking for. I put all of that aside. But you could have said that about the Mannings. You could have said about, let's say, Jackson Holliday, who was the first pick in the baseball draft, son of Matt Holliday, right? These are things that tend to come up sometimes. So it's an easy thing to throw out there.
But where does it come? Like, who decided that they would put out that narrative? Because that's not what Colorado has ever put out about Shedeur Sanders.
Well, his play speaks for itself.
Exactly.
Right?
So who pushed out that sort of? Who's starting to push out the narrative of him? I want to make sure he's all about ball. Well, isn't that every player that enters the NFL draft?
Right. When it comes to the Titans specifically, I know it's apples to oranges a little bit, but Will Levis, I remember I didn't see it, but I know it's been referenced on the station so many times. I feel like I have seen it. There was some sort of thing where the top quarterbacks went to the Manning Academy or something and had an opportunity to ask Peyton Manning about the advice of entering the NFL, and Will Levis must have asked a question about marketing and things of like, oh, Will Levis doesn't care about football because he's interested in marketing, and then with the mayonnaise cologne, and then he stunk.
Right.
So, like, I think people, and not in all sports, people equate, well, if you have your hands in so many different things and you're good, it doesn't matter. If you have your hands in other things and you're bad, your commitment is questioned.
Right. Well, let's take
what
we can see now, right? The Heisman commercials.
Yes.
Caleb Williams, when he was a Heisman Trophy winner at USC, was making commercials. Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
I just saw one the other day. The kid, the girl from USC, who's such a great player.
Watkins.
Juju. Yep. She was in a State Farm commercial with the same one that Patrick Mahomes does. You can do that now in college before you even play in the pros.
Absolutely.
So that we're in a new era for that. But I do think Adam's point is well taken. You are going to be perceived if you're cashing in before you really get it done at the highest level. People are going to be watching that. Baker Mayfield was a great example of that.
But Baker, to me, Baker was I always thought Baker was a damn good quarterback. for whatever reason, it didn't work out in Cleveland. Now we're starting to, it seems like no matter who they throw back there, it's not going to work out. So I'm not going to make it Baker Mayfield's fault. But what we got to understand is that in today's college sporting world, if you are good enough, you're going to get endorsements. Isn't that
right.
why? Isn't that why they fought for name, image, and likeness?
Yes.
So they can then get paid from it. So just because now he's reaping the benefits and may do commercials doesn't mean it takes away, his ability to concentrate on football or make football number one. He can do two things at one time. So I don't know why now this would be a sense of, oh, we need to worry about this because this guy did a few commercials. Is he really dedicated to football?
One texter pointed out that Shedeur Sanders and Shiloh Sanders walked the runway at a Louis Vuitton show in Paris in January.
Which play were they done with football in January?
January
so.
16th, 2024.
Exactly. Were they done in with their college season last year, January 2024?
They would have been done.
They were done.
Yeah.
So when you're done, can't you go live your life for a
No,
little bit?
you have to be a football player 24 hours a day,
You're
7
not
days
training,
a
you're
week.
not doing nothing.
Right,
See,
exactly.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
That same person would take that same opportunity if they had it.
Yeah.
They would take the same opportunity.
Well, let's give a couple more examples, right? I don't think that anybody would say that Will Levis crumbled this year because he didn't put the work in. Like Brian Callahan was always saying, as he was going through the evaluations and his struggles, Will gets it in the film room. He comes in, he puts the work in. It's just that he cannot translate it.
He can't translate
to
from the
what
practice
happens
to the
on,
game.
Right. So he's putting the work in.
Mhm.
He's dedicated to the game. Now let's contrast that with a couple other guys. Vince Young, I constantly heard the last guy to show up, the first guy to leave, wasn't putting in the extra time in the film room, especially when he got off to that great start. It might have been the worst thing for him because remember, he was the rookie of the year. And I think he thought, well, I'm just going to keep doing it the way I've been doing it and it's going to work. But people figured him out and he wasn't learning how to get better as good quarterbacks continue to do. And he leveled off, right? He never became the great quarterback. And then I constantly heard about Jake Locker. He was not passionate and just bound and determined to be a great player. I do think the rap of didn't love the game, I think that fit Jake Locker. I don't think that's the case with Will. Everybody's different is what I'm getting at. And I do not sense that at all with Shedeur Sanders.
I don't either. So, I mean, maybe, because I think you did mention maybe this is some way, somehow, you maneuver yourself and think that, try to make other teams think that I'm not really interested in that person, or because there's going to be a lot of cloak and dagger things going on, and a lot of I like this person, oh he's all right, and not play up the guy. You may play down the guy just because you want him eventually, and you don't want anyone else to think that he wants that guy, so I'm a try to get him or whatnot. So I think it's all I hope it's all a game being played, but in situations like that, to me, he's never shown that, at least from what I've seen. So why would that now come up?
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on this. The quarterback class, whether Shedeur Sanders is committed enough to football, which again, I think you can miss me with that. I don't know Shedeur Sanders, but I just think it's an easy thing to throw upon him because of who his dad is, basically. 615-737-1025. Call us, text us. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace Vingan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, talking quarterbacks. Tristan is in Brentwood on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHonda.com. Tristan, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call. Like, okay, Shedeur Sanders, like, he doesn't study film. Like, also, like Jason Whitlock, if you've ever heard of Jason Whitlock.
Unfortunately, yes.
He said, like, for the BYU game, they were out 2 straight nights partying, like, at a strip club. Like, you want a quarterback like that? Or there's another guy that does a podcast, Coach JB, and he, like, said, talked to Cam Ward's parents that, like, asked, like, okay, what, like, Cam Ward's parents and his agent called JB, Coach JB, and said, like, can you say this? Like, he said, why did your son, like, quit at halftime, like, after the Iowa State game? Like, do you want a quarterback like that just cares about stats? Like,
Thank you for the call. Thank you for the call, Tristan.
If you're going to take, like, 2 opinions out of
I don't know
100, 200, 300, you're going to have everything is going to be said about these guys.
I don't know who Coach JB is.
I have no idea who
I
that is.
unfortunately know who Jason Whitlock is, and I would not consider Jason Whitlock a credible source.
No, Jason Whitlock is the ultimate contrarian, tries to push buttons, and
Coach
I think
JP
has
is
lost.
From Last Chance U when they were at the I think Kansas or something.
Okay, that story, because listen, unless I got my head in the sand, and I don't think I have my head in the sand, the first story that he was explaining the whole strip club and this and that, I've never heard anything about that.
Right, and there's plenty of things that we don't hear of that do happen or get made up. Like
what I'm saying,
there
like
could be
something
anything.
like that, a day before a game, and you're out supposedly at a strip club or whatever. You're an adult, do what you want to do. But night before a game, that would be concerning if indeed that's what we were hearing. Like that was out. But I've never heard that in my life. Ever.
And in regards to the
I don't even want to push that narrative.
No, we're not gonna
erase that.
We're not going
erase that, David. I don't even want to push that. No,
I erased it.
No.
So with Cam Ward, what Tristan was referring to was he played the first half of the bowl game, against Iowa State and then sat out the second half. Now, I believe Miami later said that was always the plan, that Cam Ward was going to play the first half and then he was going to sit out the second half. But I don't think they made that clear until after the fact, which allowed people to say, did Cam Ward quit on the Hurricanes? He only played a half and then he didn't play again. Like, I don't know all of the details, but in these situations, people are going to come out of the woodwork with stories about these players. And
they're going to look for dirt. They're going to try to find every nugget of information that they can.
Unless the University of Miami and their head coach comes out and say, hey, listen, Cam decided in the middle of the game he wasn't going to come back in there. Unless they say that, I'm going to believe what they have initially said, that it was planned. And it was a bowl game. It's a bowl game. You know, and bowl, you know what bowl games really are for? And I want to explain to people what bowl games truly are for.
It's changed from when we grew up. So a lot of people still aren't on board with how the bowl games have evolved. And it disappoints me. It disappoints me because I don't like that it's like this.
Exactly. Listen, bowl games that really mean something, we all know, like mean something in the big scheme of things, are the ones that lead you to the national championship, the college playoffs. Bowl games essentially now are, listen, okay, we want to reward you for a good season, but then also for coaches, it gives you an opportunity, because a lot of these guys are opted out now. It gives you an opportunity in the extra. Ask any college coach. They love going to bowl games. They don't say anything. The first thing is we get our young players an opportunity to practice 3 more weeks to play an extra game. Our young guys. And maybe some guys that need to up their draft stock. It's good for them too. But majority of these coaches are thinking, if I'm not a national championship or one of these huge bowls, it gives me an opportunity for my team to develop, my younger team. We got extra practices that we wouldn't have had we not made a bowl game. It's not about, I'm going out here and I'm playing my guys, my seniors. I'm playing on 4 courts and I want to really win this game. Hey, listen, if you win it, you win it. You lose it, you lose it. You still get the same amount of money, okay? It's not determined on whether you win or lose. It's an opportunity now, I'm saying now, to give these young players, these freshmen, these redshirt sophomores, an opportunity to playing in a sort of meaningful game. Or more importantly, it gives them extra practice time. So Cam Ward stepping after he broke the record, then sitting on the bench, I don't see anything wrong with that, especially if they had already discussed it.
Chol is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chol, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
My thing was the guy, the other caller mentioned Jason Wheelock. Jason Wheelock said Deion Sanders on his show. I think before Deion hired Warren Sapp. Warren Sapp was on that show, and he was talking about with Jason Wheelock. He said if you like 50-something, because him and Deion is about the same age, and you still wear the chain. I think the chain Deion wear is a cross, and he say that's insecure. This man, and I think Saab said, you just hit a man. Because he doesn't like him. Anything has to do with Deion, Jason Wheelock, it's not a right guy to take anything. He hit everybody. That's my thing.
Thanks for the call, Shaw.
Well, he may have something against Deion.
Matthew in Nashville says the strip club story claims that Colorado players rented out a strip club twice in the days leading up to the game against BYU, but nobody's been able to actually confirm whether or not that story is true, which is a kind of an important detail.
Exactly.
And sharing these sorts of things. As someone who went to journalism school, who's made a living being a journalist, facts are important. Facts are an important part of this.
Who likes facts anyways?
Yes.
Yeah, nobody likes facts.
Cam is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Cam, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Good morning, fellas.
Morning.
Morning. Or afternoon, whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. So people saying, and I don't necessarily want to draft a quarterback or any of that nonsense, but at the same time, if nobody has brought this up, when you talk about players that just don't have love for the game anymore, and they're just there for the paycheck, nobody has said anything about Jamarcus Russell.
Yeah.
Hands up. Nobody. And that man, there was real deal stories coming out of LSU, going into the NFL, and he literally held the Oakland Raiders hostage. And until I hear something like that, mm-hmm. you can't take blame on teenagers. I mean, they're still kids living their lives, and as far as I'm concerned, these young men, they've done what they're supposed to do, and they can do whatever they want to do in their free time, their downtime. That doesn't mean it's decommitted from football. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Cam. And look, this is an interesting conversation that I want to have with you, Derek. Like, life has changed.
Yes.
Over the past number of decades. When you were a college athlete, mm-hmm. the opportunities for you were far fewer than college athletes have today. The entire landscape of college sports in general has changed. And I am always, I don't like seeing, this is an extreme example. I don't like seeing character assassinations. Mm-hmm. Like if a player wants to have a life outside of the sport that he plays, I think that's a good thing. Mm-hmm. I don't think an athlete should be wired to only focus on the sport that he plays. But I would love your perspective on just how much this has changed since you were a collegiate athlete to what it is now. There's zero comparison between then and now.
Yeah, you can't compare the athlete today to the athlete of yesterday. You just can't do it. There's more exposure for these individuals. There's more things that they can have, and that are afforded to them. They get an opportunity. The main thing is that they get an opportunity to take advantage of their name, their image, their likeness. If Shedeur Sanders was doing all these things that people claim he was doing, and it was out there like that, don't you think those Mercedes-Benz and all those people would have took their NIL stuff away from him? They don't want to be associated with stuff like that. They just don't. And if I was a business, I wouldn't be either. So to me, you got to have, there needs to be something, especially when it comes to these college athletes. Don't just throw things out there and hope it stick to the board. Have some concrete evidence before you do that, especially around this time of year, because it truly hurts your ability to make money. Like any story that is thrown out there at the right time, ask Laramie Tunsil what happened to him.
That's a great example.
Ask Laramie Tunsil. It cost him a lot of money.
How many spots did he drop in the draft?
He dropped to what?
He dropped several spots.
Cost him significant amount.
He dropped to the middle of the draft, didn't he? Was it the middle of the draft or the upper?
Well, that's a great example of.
That's a great example.
And a lot of people think somebody tried to just sink him intentionally.
Him, yes.
And think about how that would be viewed today.
Exactly.
I don't think it would be a big deal today. Things have changed a lot because he was basically took
smoking
a gas
marijuana.
and smoking marijuana.
He was the 13th pick.
Yes,
in the 2016
according to ESPN, the fall from number 6, which is maybe where he was expected to go, cost him roughly $8 million.
That's a lot of money for a story to be put out at that moment.
$8 million.
A lot of, and he hasn't been able to recoup that money. No matter how much money he has made since then, he hasn't been able to recoup the $8 million plus, because I'm talking interest too.
Yeah.
He hasn't been able to recoup that no matter what. So my thing is, listen, the sport is much different. The landscape of college sports is much different. I can't say that if I was in today's sport that I wouldn't take advantage of, getting NIL deals. If I was producing on the field, yes, I would take advantage of it. But two, I think I would have a better understanding of how to balance all of that. Because back then, you guys, Willie, they weren't teaching you how to truly balance all this stuff that is coming at you. Hey, you go to school, so it depending on what school you're at, Vandy, you go to school, then you worry about sports. At Michigan State, maybe it wasn't like that. Maybe it wasn't like it. It was like, hey, make sure you go to school, but damn it, you better know what you're doing on this football field too. So to me, I probably would have been able to know how to balance things a lot better if I was in today's climate because of what these athletic departments know now and the money that is involved. So they teach you how to, manage money. They teach you how to do certain things and navigate. Now, some guys listen, some guys don't. That's just the way it is. But to me, again, I don't think my dedication would have wavered because, again, y'all got to understand, these kids can't be 100% dedicated to no sport that they're playing. Why, Willie? Why? Why can't they be dedicated to whatever sport they're playing? Why can't they be 100% dedicated?
615-7.
It's a question. I would figure we will all know the question.
Yeah.
The answer. It's school.
Well,
you can't be.
You can't
be fully dedicated.
I'm starting to wonder these days the way things have changed so much the last couple of years.
Question.
No. But what I'm saying is, these kids have other things to juggle.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah.
So they can't be.
They should anyway. Like I would worry about somebody who's
In
just
theory,
all football all the time.
in
Like
theory,
that has troubles of adult. Like you should be somewhat well-rounded.
Balanced,
But that's a whole nother discussion.
615-737-1025. Speaking of the changing landscape of college sports, I read an interesting story over the weekend about Vanderbilt and something that's been going on there lately and how the NIL landscape has changed, something that fans love to do. We'll talk about that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. Howard wants to weigh in on the quarterback conversation on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. Howard, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things that I was looking at with the quarterbacks, Sanders or Ward, are either one of them currently better than Will Levis? Because if you draft either one of them, I think you draft them to play immediately. So then what do you do with Levis? Because with the season Levis had last year, I don't know what his stock would be as far as trading him and moving on from him. In my opinion, I think the draft probably should look for Carter or Hunter at the first pick, and maybe looking at a veteran quarterback to come in and help Will along if Will's your guy. If Will's not your guy, then I just don't know if either one of these quarterbacks, no disrespect to either one of them, they're both phenomenal players, but
do you think,
don't see them as generational talent.
Let me throw the question back at you just so I think I know where you're coming from. Should you be worried about next year? It sounds like to me you're thinking only. It sounded to me like most of your focus is on what happens next year. To me, that's really not what it should be about. But is that what you think?
So you want to see progression in the NFL. Just from watching these guys, these new coaches come along, they're given maybe 1, maybe 2 years to succeed. And as far as Callahan, I mean, I think that if you stay with Will, that's Callahan's job. If Will does another season like this, if you go 3 wins again, Callahan's out of a job. So
that is a fair dilemma, right? Does the coach feel like I've got to make progress or I'm going to be out, right? With the GM who's new could say, well, I got a little leeway, I got a little runway, I can take
Howard.
my time. To me that is a very important question. Is what are the realistic expectations for this coming year? If it's me, I am looking 2-3 years down the road. I don't think I can fix everything in 1 year.
No, and I have been pretty steady in saying that what I would prefer to do is if the organization is unsure about Brian Callahan, if they think that if this season goes off of a cliff like last season did early on, and Brian Callahan is the scapegoat, I wouldn't want to draft a rookie quarterback and start him and then have Brian Callahan start with him and then Brian Callahan get fired. I would much rather, in that case, take a bridge veteran quarterback where if Callahan gets fired, it's not a huge deal because the veteran quarterback is entrenched in his ways at this point. So, but I mean, the Callahan question, we've talked about this with Teron Davenport, who will join us in the next segment, about how much does the future of Brian Callahan factor into what the Titans decide to do. Now, I've heard Jared mention this last week about how it's not going to be dependent on Callahan. It's not going to be scheme dependent. But if it were me, I would not want to draft a rookie quarterback, Derek, with Brian Callahan starting the season with him and then firing that head coach. Similarly to what the Titans did with Marcus Mariota. Mariota came in, Ken Wisenhunt was his coach. He was gone quite quickly. I wouldn't want to do that again.
Yeah, I would. And when he said scheme specific, did he mean that they were not drafting? They wouldn't draft a quarterback number 1 because of their scheme. They're just drafting him because he's a good player.
I think I believe that is what he meant. Okay. Like they would not draft a quarterback because he was tailored to the type of system that Brian Callahan wants to run.
Exactly. But I understand what he's saying, right? And I don't think any GM would solely draft a guy based on just that metric. So he's right. But I think if you do have a quarterback that you feel fits in your system, and he's checked out all the boxes, then okay, you draft him if that's what you're going to do, indeed do. But here's the thing with a rookie quarterback, and this is why, if you have the number 1 pick and you are in need of a quarterback, typically what happens is when you fire the GM, you fire the head coach too. So whoever you bring in, it's like everybody's on the same timeline. We're going to develop this quarterback. We know it's going to take some years. We're going to develop him in the system that we have with the head coach and offensive coordinator that we just hired. So typically that's the way you go. So you can give that quarterback and that head coach and that GM, 2-3 years. But based on what Amy's been doing, it's probably not even 2 or 3, not even 3 years, obviously, on average. But it didn't happen that way. So for me, if you draft a guy, number one, yes, you're not drafting him for a system, but you still don't want to have to, have him learn one system and then the next very following year, he has to learn another system. You want to keep your quarterback, at least your rookie quarterback, in the same system for a few years. Why do you think Caleb Williams seems to have to, Justin Fields, why do you think he seemed to have his problems? They kept changing their coordinators, and they didn't have nobody to block for him and really to catch for him. But they changed their they were changing their coordinators. Any young quarterback, just like Will Levis, he's had so many quarterbacks in so many years. That could have been part of why he hasn't been able to develop the way, one of the reasons. I'm not saying that's the sole reason. Maybe it's one of the reasons. But my thing is, when you draft a quarterback that high, number one, you do want him to be able to stay in the system for a couple of years to see how he developed. You draft him this year, change, and get another guy in next year, maybe that sets him back a few years, and maybe that sets him back a year or two because you've changed the system. I'm sure the fans don't want that either.
Tyler on our text line says, why is everyone so enamored with the quote-unquote big arm talent of Cam Ward? If you read scouting reports about Shedeur Sanders, the only thing you hear is he's accurate, on time, and can layer throws, and that's how you win in the NFL. I'm so tired of listening to people talking about athletic potential. Those players are almost always busts. Give me someone who knows how to play the game with rhythm any day. Shedeur or Ward, no question in my mind. Oh, Shedeur over Ward, no question in my mind. That being said, I'd rather trade back to 3 or 4 and take the best player available.
He is suffering from Deion Sanders fatigue. That's what I believe it is. I believe if his dad wasn't Deion Sanders and he was playing the way he was playing, I don't think some of these things that people are saying about, because everybody wants a strong arm quarterback. Everybody wants
Will Levis was a strong arm quarterback.
But do you always get a strong arm quarterback? No. But if I can have a guy that can read the field, layer throws, anticipate throws, lead a team, know how to take, from the practice field to the game, know how to take from the classroom to the practice field to the game, the guys like that. If I got a guy like that, I'm good. Because isn't that what you want in a quarterback? Ultimately, you want him to be able to anticipate throws in the NFL. Why? Because we know, at least I know, that being a half step in front of a guy is wide open. And if you see a guy 2 or 3 steps, it was a busted coverage or the guy fell down. But typically, you got to be able to make those throws and anticipate those throws. And if you're telling me, going back to what we initially talked about in the first segment, if you're telling me he's comparing that attribute to Joe Burrow, hey, all right, let's go. That's one on top of whatever else you like about him. That's a plus. That's a damn good plus.
615-737-1025. Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Titans reporter, will join us coming up next. We'll talk about the story we referenced at the top of the show about Shedeur Sanders and the Titans draft evaluation process. We'll get into Teron's thoughts on the East-West Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl as well. We'll do that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D. Mason, Ganadonic, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you at Bridgestone Arena. Predators and Senators tonight at 6:30. I repeat, 6:30 puck drop. Pregame at 5:30 right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I understand back at our Game Nashville Studios, Teron Davenport is with us, ESPN, NFL Nation, Titans reporter. TD, we started the show by referencing your story that was published late last week on ESPN.com about the Titans evaluation process, specifically when it came to the quarterbacks. We read the quote that Brian Callahan gave you where he made a comparison between Shedeur Sanders and Joe Burrow. If I recall correctly, it was about their ability to anticipate throws because they don't necessarily have the big arm strength. And I'm sure you expected this. People took that quote and aggregated it and said, look at this crazy comparison that Brian Callahan is making. Isn't he crazy? But since you were the person who was actually speaking to Brian Callahan when he said that, what did you make of that comparison between Burrow and Sanders in that specific area?
Yeah, all the aggregators who you know what I mean, link or not, who posted that, make sure y'all link back to the story.
That's very important. That's very important.
We don't have any thievery here in the 615 area. You feel me? No, all jokes aside, I asked him specifically. I was going through the different things with Shedeur. Like, it's no secret. That's one of my favorite prospects in this draft class, followed closely by Cam Ward, by the way. And I was just going through the different traits. I'm like, well, what do you think about what people say when they say his arm isn't strong? And I'm like, because Cali, like, the dude played in Colorado. Last time I checked, Colorado wasn't the most conducive situation to throwing the football. And he said, yeah, I mean, that's when he went into the Burrow thing. And it wasn't so much like he was saying Shedeur Sanders is Joe Burrow. And that's the problem when you get this, pooling of information and not looking at the full picture. All he was saying is like they have a similar trait in that they are very anticipatory and they know where they want to go with the football. That's all he was saying.
Teron, it seems like a lot of the scuttlebutt at these events, the East-West Shrine Bowl and the Senior Bowl, is that Cam Ward might have an edge over Shedeur Sanders as it relates to the number one pick in the NFL draft. Based on your own evaluation and also people that you speak to around the league, why is Cam Ward on top of Shedeur Sanders as it stands right now in that thinking?
Well, first off, he's not. I mean, the Titans themselves don't even know that answer. So whoever is out here saying that, there is blasphemy. Right? They don't know that they're going to go. They interviewed Shedeur. They talked to Shedeur, and he wowed them at the interview. They haven't even sat down and talked to Cam yet. They haven't even seen either of these guys throw live. Like, how can they have one guy on top? That's bull crap. Just being frank. Now, as far as watching them, like from my perspective, it's hard because it depends on what you want. I think if I'm the Titans in their situation now where you have a head coach who, is looking to show that he belongs quicker than later, I would go Shedeur. But also, these things are all about fit. Daniel Jeremiah said it yesterday, that he didn't think these are quarterbacks that have universal fits, but it's going to be all about where they go. Now, I disagree because both of them played collectively for 7 different offensive coordinators, but we're not going to get into all that. I would say that Shedeur is the perfect fit for what Brian Callahan wants to do on offense. And you also have to look at what did he say were the 3 principles, right? He said, and I asked him again specifically, the core pillars of quarterbacking. And he said decision-making, accuracy, and processing. Well, when you say Shedeur Sanders, what do you do best? He's going to tell you decision-making, accuracy, and processing. And when you watch him, that's what you see. So for me, if I were making a pick, that would be the direction I go. But it's awfully hard to, turn down the playmaking and plutonium level upside that Cam Ward has.
You said that the Titans haven't had an opportunity yet to meet with Cam Ward. When is the earliest they can do that? When do you expect them to do that?
It's probably going to be combine. And that's why, there was some disappointment that, he didn't take part in the Senior Bowl stuff, because that's an earlier opportunity to meet them. And then let me also say this. I know there was a report that the Titans told Shedeur Sanders not to work out. That is grossly incorrect also. And it's funny because when it came out, I was literally standing there talking to Daryl Colbert, who's Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I was talking to their quarterback coach, and I was like, look at this. They said, yeah, that's not true. And I was like, I know. I talked to them. They told me it was far from the truth. So I just wanted to clear that up too.
Great. Now TD because I'm sure Brian Callahan understands the position he's in right now. And I think, upper management pretty much said, so, hey, listen, yeah, we're going to be patient, but also we know that we're going to hold, Brian Callahan accountable for this season.
Right.
With that being said, and him knowing, how does he, did you get a sense of how he's sort of navigating all this? Because your job's on the line. That has to be in the back of your head as well. But then also you want to pick a quarterback or an individual, a player that is going to be best for this organization and it's going to help this organization win. I wonder how he's processing all of that, or even if he had a chance to process it.
Yeah, here's the good thing, and from playing for someone, for coaches and stuff. Mm-hmm. A coach always feels like his job's on the line. You know what I mean? So it's kind of more of the same for Brian Callahan. It's like they're coaching for their job every day. That's how they feel. And that's why they spend ungodly amounts of time at the office, because they don't want to lose any advantage whatsoever. And so I think, when you talk to Callahan, I asked him about the now versus the potential. And he's just like, end of the day, I just want the best player. And whether that's a potential or ready now, I just want the best guy for this situation that we're in for the Tennessee Titans. Those are the words he literally said to me. It's interesting because I asked Mike Borgonzi, because I had a one-on-one with him at the Senior Bowl, and talked to him about similar. I just said, well, do you look at all towards the stadium opening, and how you have to have some success rolling into there? And he was like, no. All we're looking at is who could come in and help this team right now. And so that's kind of, in a nutshell, what these guys are looking at. It's the immediate. They want somebody to help them now, whether that be, either the quarterbacks, Abdul Carter, whose value just went out of the roof, by the way, with Myles Garrett asking to be traded, or Travis Hunter.
Now, was there anything or has there been anything that has happened? Because we understand this, TD. Right now, things are happening, and it seems like because it's the here and now, everything is sort of moving fast, fluid in regards to the draft. But we haven't even started free agency yet.
See?
So when you look at this and you try to decipher between these quarterbacks, or even say an Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, do you think we'll get a better idea of where they're going once free agency truly starts? Because we got to understand that the attention is going to shift.
Yes,
not just with teams, but I think from a media standpoint, it's going to shift from the draft to free agency, and what teams do in free agency will change what people are putting out there about that particular team in the draft. Say for instance, if the Titans choose to go get a bridge quarterback or a quarterback, Darnold or whatever, it changes what people think they're going to do in the draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And those two things are so intertwined, and it's just another part of the masterful way the league has set things up to where the NFL is always important. The daggone draft gets more people watching that than, NBA finals. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's crazy, but it's true. So here's the thing. When you look at this whole situation with the quarterback, and that's one of the things I also talked to Mike Borgonzi about, the bridge quarterback concept. And he was so praiseful of Alex Smith. Mm-hmm. And he talked about the way he was a veteran and they could obviously win now, but also he was a guy who was mature enough to understand that, hey, I have to bring this guy in. They drafted this guy. They moved up to get him. He's my replacement. My days are numbered here, but I'm going to help him, right? And he was willing to do that. Now, not everybody's willing to do that. You know what I mean? So it's going to really take a certain type of bridge quarterback if that's the avenue that they go. And that's basically what Borgonzi was telling me. So that's going to be interesting what happens on the veteran side of things. I mean, look, Aaron Rodgers, if he comes available, he could very well be in play. Now, if you're bringing in Aaron Rodgers, don't expect him to, help whoever's behind him, because that's not what he received, right? And Aaron Rodgers, we know Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. You know what I mean? He's not gonna do that. But if you do bring him in, then that's your guy, that's your bridge, so to speak, for the next couple of years. But in 2 years, you're gonna be in a situation where you really got to find something. Sam Darnold is another option. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's another one in play. We'll see who else shakes free. Like you look at when the Chiefs traded Alex Smith to the then it was the Washington football team. When they traded him there, nobody really expected that trade to happen, but it happened, and boom.
Talking to Teron Davenport. Teron, Myles Garrett and the announcement that he wants to be traded, that was quite the production. That's a seismic player.
Ooh.
And, of course, the Browns pick second. What do you think that has as far as an effect on the draft? Like, how does a Mike Borgonzi look at that and say, okay, how does that affect what we need to do?
Yeah, well, I know one thing. Andre Dillard over there with the Packers, he's praying that the Vikings, Lions, and Bears don't get him, because he would definitely be saying, oh, my. But you look at that trade, so obviously that's going to impact some first-round picks, and it's going to probably require 2 of them. The Titans don't necessarily have to be concerned with that too much unless they trade down, because now, if a team trades for Myles Garrett, they're not going to be able to move down to 3 like may have been thought before and still be able to get Abdul Carter. Because if the Browns trade Myles Garrett, Abdul Carter, a.k.a. Micah Parsons, is the guy they're bringing. He's coming in, and he's going to take over as their next centerpiece on defense. So I think that's how it affects a team like the Titans. But even at number 1, like if they want to, take this year's one and next year's one, and I wouldn't do it because they're not just a Myles Garrett away from being successful. But if they want to do that, they're definitely in a really good place to do it.
I'm curious, other things that you are learning about Borgonzi in this early portion of his tenure as he tries to set up the system here. For example, did you get the sense, like I got the sense from Brian Callahan at his last press conference at the end of the regular season, that he would love to be involved in the evaluation process of these quarterbacks. Yeah. Do you get the feeling this was before Borgonzi was even hired, right? So do you feel like Borgonzi is the type that will really allow Brian Callahan to be part of that process?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because then I touched on it in the story. Well, first off, Borgonzi, he's a scout at heart, right? He's an evaluator at heart. So, yeah, definitely he's going to want to be involved. But one of the things I asked him, because I was so intrigued, because so many times that you look at right now, right? Everybody's talking about what Cam Ward can't do. Everybody's talking about what Shedeur Sanders can't. Oh, he doesn't have a strong arm. Oh, he holds on to the ball. Well, what about what he does really well? Like, he's a surgeon. What about what Cam does really well? Things go off schedule, he's going to make things happen. Like if he has to freelance, you know what I mean? And he can win from the pocket. So I say all that to say, I was really fascinated by how the Chiefs said, you know what? Forget all the areas of improvement. Let's look at what this dude could do well, because good gracious. At Texas Tech, he was killing it. You know what I mean? And that's how they looked at it. So I asked him about that process. And he said, well, we did hone in on what he did well. And watching film with Andy Reid, like having Andy Reid there it really helped, because we'll be sitting there watching film and we'll see Patrick throw from a bad mechanics and his body angle isn't right. This, that, and his footwork is wrong. And Andy would just look at it and say, man, I could fix that. And so having that luxury, right, the luxury that, everyone thought was going to happen with Bill Callahan and Nicholas Petit-Frere, it happened with Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Mike Borgonzi, Brett Veach. So that's more or less an example of the willingness. And so I said, well, what about Brian Callahan? Like, what do you think he could bring? And he talked about how Callahan is a very smart coach. He talked about his tenure. He's like, man, this guy worked with Peyton Manning, with Matthew Stafford, with Joe Burrow. Man, he worked with a lot of quarterbacks. So they're going to use Callahan in this evaluation process. I just wonder if, it's going to be Callahan saying, hey, you know what? I know he likes to freelance a little bit, but we could rein that in. You know what I mean? So that's going to be an interesting thing to watch.
I'm curious, too, as you learn more about Borgonzi, there's been so much rhetoric about who's got the call and how does the communication system work, who's in charge, all of that. But we know that if you're the right personality, that you can just sort of have people rally around you and you sort of naturally become the captain of the ship. Do you think Borgonzi's got that sort of in his DNA? Do you sense that?
I do. I like Borgonzi. Just talking to him one-on-one. Willie, by the way, he's a Red Sox fan, and he's in our age demographic. Before we even talked about football, I drilled him about that 86 World Series. You best believe that. But I think he does have that ability. And the thing is, he came from that. He saw that, right? Obviously, Brett Veach was the GM. He was the assistant GM. Andy Reid was where the buck stopped, right? And so you look at the Mahomes situation. They had to get Reid to buy in on Mahomes, and then once he bought in and he's like, oh yeah, I could do this, I could do that, then the end product is, hey, we're going to move up to get him. So I think just having this isn't unfamiliar territory for him, so I think he'll be in good shape there.
Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, joining us. News to everybody out there. If you're going to aggregate Teron, at least link to the story.
Please.
That's very,
Please link
very,
to the story.
Linking is very important. Even if you blow the quote out of proportion, at least link to the story. Teron, great stuff, my friend. We'll talk next week.
All right, for sure. Appreciate you guys.
Yep.
TD joining us on the program, 615-737-1025. Okay, let's get to that Vanderbilt story I teased earlier because we had lots of calls. I'm glad we had them. Let's get to that Vanderbilt story I teased. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063. The Game.
All right, let's talk Lee Company. Predators in action tonight. Remember, it is a 6:30 start, so our pregame coverage will start at 5:30 with Max Hurst here in Smashville as the Ottawa Senators are in town. So with that in mind, our coverage will be brought to you by Lee Company. Lee Company has all of your services ready to go when it comes to maintenance, when it comes to home improvement, and, of course, the things that really make your house run on a yearly basis. Your heating system, your cooling system, your plumbing, and your electrical systems. They've got the year-round plan for you. It's simple. The home maintenance plan. Small monthly fee, $12 a month, starting as low as that. And you get those year-round checkups to find the little problems and have experts tell you it's time to get this fixed or that fixed. And when the repairs are needed, and over time, if you're a homeowner, you're going to need repairs, you get discounts on those repairs. You'll save money in the long haul with the home maintenance plan from Lee Company. 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. That's 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. It's Lee Company, proud sponsor, Nashville Predators.
It doesn't have to be Halloween for me to enjoy some Rockwell featuring Michael Jackson. Somebody's watching me. Great at any time of the year.
And by the way, at the Grammys last night, they were celebrating.
Rockwell was there? No.
They didn't have Rockwell there. They didn't, but they did have Herbie Hancock.
Oh, okay.
And they had a tribute to the late Quincy Jones, right? Which was cool. And they had a woman who absolutely nailed the Michael Jackson moonwalk, had the outfit on and everything because just Quincy Jones was a great producer for Michael Jackson. So that was pretty well done.
I think Quincy Jones may have produced Somebody's Watching Me. Wouldn't shock me if that was the case.
It is possible.
Also,
I don't know that for a fact.
One texter did say that adding to the banned words that we're putting together, Generational One checks all the boxes, should be number 2 on the banned phrases
that checks
and
all the
words.
boxes?
That does check all the boxes.
I did use that today.
Yes, we will keep track of the banned words. So I was reading this story in the Washington Post written by Jesse Doherty. The headline, Storm the Court? That's a $500,000 question. An athletic director's plea at Vanderbilt shows that in the NIL era of college athletics, even celebrations come with a cost-benefit analysis. And the story opens with the scene from recently, Vanderbilt hosting Kentucky. Vanderbilt pulls off the upset. Candace Story-Lee, the athletic director of Vanderbilt, a reporter for the Vanderbilt Hustler, reported that Candace Story-Lee said, quote, "Let us use the money for NIL to make a great team next year," as she is pleading with Vanderbilt students not to rush the court. And they actually had a great quote from a student in here, a senior, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Alex Kurbagov. And Kurbagov said there were a few seconds, there were a few seconds there where it was like, what do we do? But when we saw the band running on people from under the baskets, we were gone. At the end of the day, we did not listen to her. However, we did not lead the charge. But as we know from the court storming and field storming that Vanderbilt has done since the football team defeated Alabama, it's $850,000 that Vanderbilt has had to write checks. They had to write one to Alabama. They had to write a check to Tennessee, and they had to write a check to Kentucky. And it was a really fascinating story. Like, court storming is not like the student said. You're not thinking about that when your favorite team wins a huge game. But it is an interesting question about NIL and the fines that schools can incur and how that money could be spent in different ways. There was a paragraph here at the bottom that I thought summarized everything from Jesse Doherty, reporter. Quote, "Here then is the inner monologue of a college sports fan circa 2025. Your team just beat a much better team on paper. It's your right, your duty even, to celebrate as if it might not happen again for 5, 10, 20 years, long after you've graduated and been able to drink 9 natty lights without getting hungover. But you know that storming might make it harder to recruit that mid-major transfer, that 4-star point guard, a 4th grader who could eventually make you very happy with a buzzer beater. You are torn, maybe, yet you're more human than calculator. Fundraising, cost saving, none of that's your job." But I do think it's an interesting thing that we don't think about in the world of NIL, Willie, that the money that Vanderbilt is writing to the checks they are writing to these other schools, it's money that they're not using on NIL.
Well, it goes to the larger question, I think, of NIL over the next 5 to 10 years. I think in 5 to 10 years, is Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, will those schools be able to pay adequate NIL, continue to sustain that kind of thing? Mm-hmm. Yes. But I think at the vast majority of schools, which I think Vanderbilt would be in this class, that next tier down, where money isn't just growing on trees for this kind of thing, it's new. How sustainable is it? Like they have to find ways, creative ways to keep up, and they're going to have to be smart with how they do it. I think we're still in the beginning stages of everybody's like, yeah, let's give the money to the players. We need players. But like asking again and again the same people to fund it every year, if you've got a smaller pool of people that really can do that, how often can you go to that well? And for students, the students can't comprehend that, right? They can't be thinking, well, I can't run on the court because our team needs money for that's not what somebody who's a sophomore and just having a great time in the student section is thinking it all, right?
Yeah, but okay, I heard this because Deion Sanders was talking about this exact same thing, sort of the NIL and the collective.
Yeah, because he was the first to say, look,
yeah.
we have trouble. We don't have as much as Alabama. We don't have as much as Ohio State.
But NIL is different from a collective. NIL is Adam getting a contract separate of anybody else's. So that is Adam's money. It's not Derek and Willie's money to share with Adam. The NIL is Adam's money. Okay, that's just for him. The school ain't giving it. Somebody's giving it to him. The collective is they're putting it in a pool, and then that is what some of the other guys are getting money out of. But if I'm Nike or if I'm a dealership, I am working with Adam. I'm not working with the university. So when they say, well, that's taking away money from me now, that's a lie. At least I believe that to be not the truth, not the whole truth. Because if I'm doing an NIL deal, I'm doing it with one person specifically. I'm not doing an NIL deal with the university and then they can pay and then they play the athlete. No. If an athlete, and I could be wrong on this, I'm completely wrong. But listening to how Deion Sanders explained it, this is how I understand it to be. Again, a NIL name, image, and likeness deal is for Willie. It's not for Derek, and it's not for Adam. The collective, if y'all want to draw money from everybody else, the collective put money in a pool, and that's how we play the other people that can't get NIL deals. So when they say that's taking money from, no, it's not. That is not, because Nike is not taking money from Adam to give to that the university then would have to pay, for the fine. That's not what's happening. So when they say that, that's not true, I don't think. You see what I'm saying, Willie?
Yeah.
So that's not, so when you say they should find a better way to sort of manage all of this. Like if you want to storm the court, make sure the players are off the court. Make sure the visiting players are off. Let the fans know that. If you rush the court and the visiting players are not off, you will not be able to come to a game probably that season. We'll redo it the next following season. That will curve a lot. We're not saying you can't storm the field, the field or the court. Just wait till they leave. And then you could come on and celebrate. Because the players love that.
It would be nice to be able to figure out how to try to accommodate the thrill, the excitement, and the balancing the safety part of it.
Exactly.
And also make sure that you can have your fun at these games. Like there's a balance. Like
exactly.
How do you do it right?
There's a great quote in here from Joseph West, a quote Nashville native and self-described Vanderbilt superfan. And Joseph West said, quote, moving forward, now that you've stormed the court against number 6 and number 9, your record is good. You're setting up to make the NCAA tournament. I think you expect to win. To that end, I don't think you should storm the court anymore. And I think the money does come into play. You have to be smart. NIL matters. Then the reporter said, so what about when Auburn visits on February 11th? What if Vanderbilt wins that game too? West responds, okay, pure hypothetical. Number 1, Auburn comes in and we knock them down. I'll be on that floor. I'll be dancing on the V at the center of the court. But you just said, I know, I am contradicting myself. Man, this write-up you're doing is going to be a mess. But it's number 1 Auburn. How do you not storm the court if you beat number 1 Auburn?
But, somebody needs to call in that really knows this, this rule in regards to where does the money come from? Because before there was NIL deals, they were getting fined, right? When you stormed on the court.
Yeah.
So again, when you say it takes money away or it takes away our ability to the NIL, are you talking about the collective?
Okay.
Or are you talking about the NIL?
But here's the real deal.
You get fined and they don't want to pay it.
The collective really isn't that separate from the athletic program. It's supposed to be. But I think the reality is they're all in cahoots. They're all working with nothing happens without the coach knowing it's happening. I don't believe that.
I get that part.
It's all one and the same.
My thing is there has to be a distinct difference, because why did they allow individuals? Why did they bring in the NIL? So individuals, not everybody. So individuals can make money off of their name, image, and likeness. Now, with college sports said, listen, each individual, if y'all want to put it, it's not out of bounds to put together a group of people that want to then put money in a pile. But that's separate from Adam getting his own money. So again, is it affecting the individuals that are putting inside the collective? If it's affecting that, then okay, I understand. But you can't say it's affecting Adam when Adam has a contract separate of the university.
But I just don't know that there really is such a thing. I think for rare athletes, if there is a business,
but there has to be a separation between the school and NIL. That's the rule. Am I wrong or am I right?
Well,
but I'm just saying what
I'm
the
going to
rules.
answer your question with a question. Are there rules? Are there really rules?
So all it says on the call screener is Doug from Franklin says D Mace is wrong. So let's go to Doug from Franklin
I'm wrong.
on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Doug, let us know why Derek is wrong.
Well, he's not completely wrong, but he's right. NIL deal is separate. But if Adam has an NIL deal and money has to be paid out for a fine and it comes out of the collective or a budget, it means that Adam doesn't get the wide receiver or the defensive tackle or the left tackle that he needs because there's less money to spend on all the support.
In the collective, right?
In the collective, right?
Okay.
So,
okay.
So if we have to look at it, how many NIL deals were there for the Vanderbilt Commodores football team? And then how many of the other players were paid out of the collective?
Okay,
you're right. There should be a separation. Mm-hmm. But if the Chevrolet dealer is sponsoring the university, mm-hmm. and the Chevy dealer goes and hires Diego for a name, image, and likeness, where is that separation? But they don't put something in a discretionary budget for court storming, so it's got to come somewhere. Does it come from the collective? Derek's right. We don't know where it comes from, mm-hmm. but chances are, if it can't come from NIL, it's got to come from collective, which hurts the rest of the team that doesn't have an NIL deal.
So, okay, Doug, where do you stand on this subject in terms of Vanderbilt wanting to curb court storming so they're not spending $850,000 to other SEC schools?
I think Vanderbilt needs to go do more fundraising, because if they can have those kind of wins and storm the court, I'd be out finding a sponsor for court storming.
Well, that is like kind of how you would justify it, is say, can you put a price on the publicity when mm-hmm. all of the Sports Center and, around the social media channels that circulates, right?
This court storming brought to you by.
Well, how much is that worth in your in your marketing, right? You can't pay for that kind of publicity.
Yeah, you're right. But
so you can justify it. Ideally, you don't have to pay the money every time. But that I don't like it. This is a good problem. Uh-huh. I look at Vanderbilt's schedule honestly, how tough it is.
How many more court storming? How many more court? They
got a lot of
Auburn
potential.
will be here. Auburn will be here next Tuesday.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How many court storming opportunities do they have left?
Well, let's just put it this way. For Vanderbilt's remaining schedule, according to Ken Palm, and you've made this point, Adam.
Yes.
On paper, you, in theory, could court storm for virtually every home game that they have left, because they will be an underdog. They're not going to be a huge underdog, but they'll be a sizable underdog to Auburn, as good as Vanderbilt has played. And this is the lesson that I think every Vanderbilt team has to learn. As soon as you start looking around going, we're in the top 25,
which
we're
they're not,
really
which they're not
good
anymore, by the way.
Well,
they've dropped out of the top 25.
This is the lesson.
Yes.
This is what I saw happen on Saturday. Having been in that jersey, mm-hmm. I was on teams that fell victim to this. You get a couple big wins. You have the court storming. You get a lot of, hey, great job. You beat Kentucky. That's awesome. I've been a Vanderbilt fan all my life. Keep going, guys. This is awesome. You get a little complacent. They go to Oklahoma. In the first 15 minutes, they're playing great. They're hitting all the shots. They're playing with confidence. I think they were like, hey, we're pretty good. We're top 25. We're going to kill these guys. And then all of a sudden, reality kind of set in. They hit a little wall. I think they took their foot off the gas. Oklahoma comes back, gets hot. They got their home fans. They're a good shooting team. Their strengths come out, and Vanderbilt got completely stuck. Mm-hmm. Let's hope that was the lesson to be learned. They have to be at their best every game, I think, just to win 3, 4, 5 more games, which is what they're going to need to get into the tournament. because this league is so tough. You cannot come in and take – Florida found out.
Yeah.
Right? I think Florida was like, hey, Zakai Ziegler's out. We're number 5 in the country. We're going to roll right into Knoxville and have an easy game. No, you're not. Not in this league. Not in this league. So
I think
what about Kentucky?
Yeah,
hey,
thing.
Coach Cal's coming in. Arkansas is not very good. We're going to boo Coach Cal. We're going to roll. We're going to kill those guys. It's going to be a lot of fun. No, it's not. No, it's not.
I'm just telling
not
you.
in this league.
I was very much Coach Willie on Saturday, even when Duke was up 32 in the second half. I was like, it's not over yet. It's not over yet. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
Not over yet.
No, I would have pretty much been like, yeah, this game's over.
No, and then so anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, Vandy, they're in order for them to continue to, you know, whether it becomes this continual conversation about the court storming or not. I think Vandy has to, the way they play UT and the way they play Kentucky, they have to give that sort of energy every game from here on out. And I know it's tough because they're playing sort of like day after day and in the physical grind. I get it. But if you start to match them up, say like player for player, they're not bigger than Kentucky. They're not as skilled as UT. They're not as maybe well coached as Auburn. And Auburn got some damn good players too. But what they do have that I think those teams, they have it, but you know, Vandy has, and it really shows. I think that grit in that grind to continue to play hard. They got to continue to play that way throughout the season because again, they don't play no cupcakes. Moving forward, they do. The SEC, I will say, I will admit this, and I hate to do it sometimes, but they have the strongest conference in college basketball.
No doubt.
Yes.
No doubt.
I've always thought it was the ACC or the Big Ten. But over the last 2 years, I think the SEC basketball has made a tremendous jump. So they got to continue to play hard-nosed basketball because they're out. Sometimes they're outsized. Sometimes they're outskilled. But at least in that UT game and that Kentucky game, man, they fought. They fought. They were scrappy, and they made the shots they need to make. And they played great defense. You and I talked about that last week, Willie, about Vandy and their ability to play, you know, defense, especially in the passing lanes.
If you let your guard down in this league, especially if you're not the most talented team, and Vanderbilt is not. Vanderbilt is when they are playing together and they're playing with that tenacity and they play that great on-ball defense, they can hang with the top teams. And they've shown the ability to beat really good teams. But if they don't have that edge, they cannot fall back on being the more talented team. That is Auburn might be able to be on a given night or two. They're that talented. Vanderbilt's not in that league, and that's where I hope they learned the lesson in the second half of that game against Oklahoma.
If anybody wants to sponsor court stormings.
Yes.
Court storming sponsored by.
I would say us, but we don't have that kind of cash.
No, we're just
nah.
We
got our own issues.
You sure you ain't got it
Court
on your
storming
mattress,
brought to you by Willie Donick,
Derek Mason,
and also Adam chipped in $1. 615-737-1025. Coming up next to wrap up the show. Did we see one of the dumbest trades in the history of sports over the weekend? We'll discuss that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063. The Game. D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Garrick Mason, Adam Vingan here with you live from Bridgestone Arena. Predators and Senators tonight at 6:30. Again, 6:30. Pregame at 5:30 right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company coming up next. Jared is live from Radio Row at Super Bowl 49. Is it 49 or 59?
59.
59. Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. Jared will be there all week. Looking forward to his great coverage from the Big Easy. But the sports world came to a screeching halt over the weekend, gentlemen, when the Dallas Mavericks traded Luka Doncic to the LA Lakers for Anthony Davis. And I think this headline from The Ringer exemplifies what many people are thinking. The Luka Doncic trade is the dumbest NBA move I've ever seen. There's no living this one down. In a trade that makes zero basketball sense and will go down in NBA infamy, the Dallas Mavericks are sending prime Luka to the LA Lakers for real. The author, Michael Pina, wrote, "Last night, the Dallas Mavericks made in my dozen years professionally covering the NBA and lifetime of following it religiously as a fan, the most damaging, indefensible trade I've ever seen. It's as bad as it is mystifying as it is comical." And I just showed Derek. Apparently, Luka Doncic took a screenshot of his call log and shared it on Instagram. And it was just missed calls from the GM. So his name was in red multiple times. And then there was one call from LeBron James in there that he seemed to answer. But every other call from the GM, he missed. But gentlemen, you're just like, I couldn't believe this was real when I saw this. Well, I think it's, we haven't seen it on the court yet, obviously. This could go down as one of the biggest blunders, I feel like, in sports history, considering where Doncic is in his career versus Anthony Davis.
And I get it, but listen, both of these guys are all stars.
Absolutely,
both of these guys are made the All NBA team.
By the way, Jared Stillman tells me he believes that call log was fake, so maybe it is. But either way,
yes. But I was wondering why he had the two hearts on LeBron. So anytime LeBron calls, no matter what he's doing, he's stopping and he's answering that.
Maybe.
He has the purple and the gold heart.
I might have been hoodwinked or bamboozled.
I think you were.
If indeed that was the case.
Okay.
If indeed that was the case.
It's better than retweeting fake news, which I haven't done yet.
You got NBA Central.
But I look at this trade. We got to understand. Listen, you're taking a 25-year-old, all-star, all NBA guy, and he's excellent on the offensive side of the ball. He is excellent. You put him up there with the best scorers in the NBA right now, or within the last 10 years, and he's up there.
Incredible scorer.
Yeah, incredible. Scorer. But he is more than a liability, and when I say, I mean more. I could play better defense than he does. He is a huge liability. That's one of the reasons why they lost. Because he didn't play. When you have your superstar, like the face of your team, and he doesn't play, why do you think Carmelo Anthony's career went exactly the way it did? Because Carmelo Anthony never figured out how to play defense at a level that his scoring was at. That's why he was always the best scorer on his team, but his team struggles. Why? Because when Carmelo was on the floor defensively, he was more of a liability than an asset. Luka Doncic is the same way. He's a better scorer than Carmelo Anthony, but I would argue he's just as much as a liability as Carmelo Anthony was on the defensive side of the ball. Steph Curry is so great and he wins so much. Why? Not only is he great on one end, he's really good on the other. LeBron James, he's great on one end and he's great on the other. When you look at these guys that are perennial winners and they're the face of their team, typically they play really good on one side and they play good enough, or sometimes they play great on the other. Nobody in the NBA can say that about Luka Doncic. What we can say is he's a hell of a scorer. Dallas got what they felt they needed, a defensive presence, but a guy that can also give you 25 a night and 20 rebounds and 3 or 4 block shots. If he's not hurt. He's been more healthy over the last year and a half, but when he's out there, and he's been out there more times than not the last year and a half, he's going to give you what you need on the defensive end and the offensive end. Now, the Lakers win this no matter what. Why? Because the Lakers have this uncanny ability from going from Magic Johnson. You can even go back a little bit further than that, but going from Magic Johnson
Kareem.
to Kobe.
Yep.
Or Magic Johnson to LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
They had superstars. LA they got to have a showstopper. Willie, when they didn't have a showstopper before Kobe got there, they wasn't a good team. They were not. When Nick Van Exel was your main guy,
and Magic was coaching.
And Magic was coaching. You had a superstar
they had
coaching, but you ain't have a superstar on the floor.
Randy Fund was the coach.
Exactly.
For a while.
No Nick Van Exel slander on this program.
Listen, but the Lakers know they won this no matter what.
Yeah.
Why? Because they got them a showstopper.
But I think it's going to be a really, now that he's even in a bigger market.
Yes.
Dallas is a pretty big market.
Yes.
But LA is a different stratosphere.
It's a completely different
stratosphere. And now
he can't be hit.
Luka's game is now going to be scrutinized on an even higher level because there's going to be more pressure. And I think it's a great study of what's going to happen. He's 25. Mm-hmm. His career can go in a couple ways because he does have kind of a pudgy body. He's got a reputation of not playing defense and whining at the officials, right? And so there's a greatness talent. He is one of the best I've ever seen at when there's a big shot, getting his own shot. He's right up there with Steph and those guys. He can hit huge shots. He's taking over games. But winning championships, you got to have more, right? You got to have that drive. Are you bringing everybody else into the fight with you? I think there's questions with that. I think otherwise the Mavericks would not have made this move.
It's all up to my guy JJ Redick. It's all up to JJ to get the most.
He can grow out of it. He's 25. He still might be able to be influenced if he gets it. But I could also see him at 30 scoring 30, 35 points a game, but a team that doesn't win.
He's going to be a much better version of Carmelo Anthony. And when I mean that, I just mean strictly on the offensive side of the ball. He hadn't played defense since he's been in the NBA. He's not going to learn how to play. That's the same thing they were saying about Carmelo Anthony. Oh, he's going to this place. He's going to play great defense. Oh, he's playing with LeBron now. He never found out how to play defense, and that's going to be daunting.
That'll do it for us today. Predators and Senators tonight. Puck drop at 6:30, pregame at 5:30 on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jared coming up live from Radio Row in New Orleans next.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, and wonderful Monday. Peace.